The warning klaxons of the exploration vessel Wanderer's Dream pierced through the silence of space as Captain Marcus Chen watched the sleek Zephyrian warship materialize on his viewport. The alien vessel was beautiful in its deadly elegance, all flowing curves and crystalline surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Marcus had seen pictures of Zephyrian ships before, but never this close. Never close enough to see the intricate patterns etched into their hulls that seemed to pulse with an inner light. "Captain, they're hailing us," reported Lieutenant Sarah Park from the communications station. Her voice carried the tension that everyone on the bridge felt. First contact with the Zephyrians was supposed to be handled by trained diplomatic teams, not a small exploration crew on the edge of charted space. Marcus straightened his uniform and nodded. "Put them through, Lieutenant. And Sarah? Make sure our mental shields are at maximum. I don't want any accidents." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the interior of the Zephyrian command deck. The first thing Marcus noticed was how eerily quiet it seemed. No shouted orders, no urgent conversations. The crew moved with perfect synchronization, as if they were parts of a single organism rather than individuals. At the center of it all stood their commander. Commander Zarathel was tall and graceful, as all Zephyrians were, with the characteristic blue-tinted skin and large, dark eyes that seemed to hold depths of starlight. Her silver hair was bound in complex braids that sparkled with embedded crystals, each one a sign of rank and achievement in Zephyrian society. She wore robes that seemed to shift color in the light, practical yet elegant. But what struck Marcus most was her expression. While every other Zephyrian he'd seen in recordings wore the serene, almost blank look of constant telepathic communication, Zarathel's face was animated with curiosity, her large eyes fixed on him through the screen with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see straight through him. "Human vessel," she spoke, her voice carrying the musical quality typical of her species. "I am Commander Zarathel of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. You have entered space claimed by the Empire. State your intentions." Marcus stepped forward, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just first contact for him personally, it was potentially setting the tone for human-Zephyrian relations for generations to come. "Commander Zarathel, I am Captain Marcus Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Wanderer's Dream. We're conducting a peaceful survey mission in what we believe to be unclaimed space. We had no intention of trespassing and are prepared to withdraw immediately if required." As he spoke, Marcus noticed something odd. While the other Zephyrians on the bridge maintained their typical serene expressions, Zarathel's eyes widened slightly, and she tilted her head in a gesture that seemed almost human in its curiosity. "Captain Chen," she said slowly, "your mental shields are unusual. Most species we encounter have organized, structured thought patterns. Yours appears to be..." She paused, searching for words. "Chaotic, yet somehow purposeful." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. He knew about the Zephyrian reputation for telepathy, but he'd been told that human mental shields were impenetrable to their kind. The fact that she could read anything at all was concerning. "I assure you, Commander, I have no hostile intentions," Marcus replied carefully. "If my mental patterns are causing discomfort to you or your crew, I apologize." Zaratel's expression shifted, and for a moment Marcus could have sworn he saw her smile. It was a subtle expression, barely visible, but it seemed genuine. "Discomfort?" she repeated. "Captain, I have been a telepath for over 2 centuries. I have touched the minds of countless beings across dozens of species, Vulcans with their rigid logic, Altairians with their mathematical precision, even the complex emotional matrices of the empathic collective. But your mind, it's like a symphony, where every instrument is playing a different song, yet somehow it creates the most beautiful music I've ever heard." The bridge of the Wanderer's Dream fell silent. Marcus could feel the eyes of his crew on him, could sense their confusion and concern. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to go. According to every briefing he'd received, Zephyrians were cold, calculating beings who valued order and predictability above all else. They weren't supposed to compare human minds to music. "I'm not sure I understand, Commander," Marcus said slowly. Zarathel stepped closer to her screen, and Marcus could see something in her eyes that he hadn't expected from any alien, let alone a Zephyrian.
Wonder.
Pure, childlike wonder. "Your thoughts, Captain Chen. They're not organized like other species. Where a Vulcan might think, analysis, human vessel, assess threat level, determine appropriate response. Your mind is thinking dozens of things simultaneously. You're analyzing my ship's design, wondering about my homeworld, calculating jump coordinates for escape routes, remembering something called chocolate ice cream from your childhood, composing what appears to be a poem about starlight, and feeling concern for your crew's safety all at the same time. Marcus blinked in surprise. She was right. His mind did jump from thought to thought like that, and he'd never really thought about it as unusual. That's normal for humans, he said. Normal? Zarathel's voice carried a note of amazement. Captain, do you realize what you're doing right now? While we're having this conversation, part of your mind is running tactical assessments, another part is admiring the aesthetic design of my ship. You're remembering your mother's advice about treating strangers with respect. You wondering what I look like without my command robes? You're calculating the probability that this encounter will lead to war, and you're simultaneously composing what I believe you call terrible jokes about aliens. Marcus felt his face flush red, particularly at the comment about wondering what she looked like. Commander, I apologize if my thoughts are inappropriate.
Inappropriate?
Zarathel interrupted, and this time there was no mistaking her smile.
Captain, in my entire career, I have never encountered anything so alive.
Other minds think in straight lines, predictable patterns. Yours thinks in spirals and curves and impossible angles. It's like watching a master artist create something beautiful from chaos. Behind Marcus, he could hear Lieutenant Park whisper to the navigation officer, "Is this really happening? Is she flirting with the captain?" Zarathel's hearing was apparently excellent because she looked directly at Lieutenant Park through the screen. "Your subordinate is correct, Captain. I believe I am engaging in what humans call flirting. This is a new experience for me." The bridge fell silent again. Marcus felt as though he'd fallen into some kind of alternate reality where up was down and water flowed uphill. "Commander, with all due respect, I was told that Zephyans found human minds disturbing." "Most do," Zarathel agreed. "To most of my people, touching a human mind is like being caught in a storm. But I am not most of my people, Captain. I have always been different. Where others see chaos, I see creativity. Where others feel overwhelmed, I feel energized." She moved closer to her screen again, and Marcus could see her clearly now. Her eyes were indeed like starlight, deep and mysterious, with flecks of silver that caught the light. She was beautiful, but it was her intelligence that truly captivated him. There was a sharpness to her gaze, a quick wit that reminded him that she was likely far older and more experienced than she appeared.
Captain,
she said, her voice softer now, more personal. "I have a proposition. My orders are to investigate this sector for potential threats. Your orders, I assume, are to explore and learn. Perhaps we could combine our missions?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind?" "A cultural exchange. I could show you wonders of the galaxy that your people have never seen. In return..." She paused, and Marcus could have sworn he saw uncertainty in her expression for the first time. "In return, perhaps you could help me understand how your mind works." "How human minds work." "Commander," Marcus said carefully, "I should point out that I'm not a diplomat or a scientist. I'm just an explorer." "Just an explorer," Zarathel repeated, and her smile returned. "Captain, do you realize that in the 15 minutes we've been talking, your mind has generated 17 different solutions to problems you haven't even encountered yet, created what I believe is an epic poem about the loneliness of space travel, and designed a new type of engine that shouldn't be theoretically possible but somehow makes perfect sense?" Marcus stared at her. "I did all that. You're doing it right now," she confirmed. "At this very moment, you're wondering if I'm telling the truth, calculating the political ramifications of accepting my proposal, remembering your grandmother's advice about trusting your instincts, and designing what I think is a new type of flower that could grow in zero gravity."
Marcus laughed despite himself. "The flower is for my botanist, Lieutenant Commander Torres."
"She's been trying to develop zero-gravity cultivation methods." "Of course she has," Zarathel said, and her expression was full of delight. "Your species doesn't just explore space. You want to bring life with you. You want to make dead worlds bloom. Most species we encounter see space as something to conquer or control. Humans see it as something to fill with beauty." The conversation was interrupted by a soft chiming from Zarathel's ship. She turned to speak with one of her officers in rapid Zephyrian, then looked back at Marcus with an expression that seemed almost apologetic. "Captain, I'm receiving orders from my superiors. They want me to escort you out of our territory immediately." She paused, then added quietly, "However, my orders also give me discretion in how to handle first contact situations. If you were to accept my proposal for cultural exchange, it would fall under that discretion. Marcus could feel the weight of the decision. Accepting would mean potentially putting his crew at risk, violating protocols, and possibly creating an international incident. Declining would mean losing what might be humanity's best chance to establish peaceful relations with one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. But as he looked at Zaratel's face on the screen, at the genuine curiosity and excitement in her eyes, he realized that the decision wasn't really about politics or protocols. It was about two beings who had found something unexpected in each other.
Commander, he said finally, I accept your proposal.
But I have conditions. My crew's safety is my first priority, and I want to be able to communicate with my superiors regularly. Zarathel's smile was radiant. Of course, Captain. I would expect nothing less from someone whose mind generates safety protocols faster than our computers can process them. She paused, then added with what Marcus was beginning to recognize as her unique brand of humor. Also, I'm curious about this chocolate ice cream you keep remembering. Is it truly as wonderful as your memories suggest? Marcus found himself grinning. Commander, if we're going to be working together, that's going to be the first thing I teach you about humanity. We take our ice cream very seriously. Excellent, Zarathel replied. And Captain, welcome to the most interesting mission of your career. As the communication ended and both crews began preparations for what would be an unprecedented joint mission, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a turn towards something extraordinary. He'd come out here to explore unknown space, and instead, he'd found something far more valuable than new worlds or resources. He'd found someone who looked at the chaos of his human mind and saw not madness, but beauty. And somehow, that seemed like the most miraculous discovery of all. 3 days into their joint mission, Marcus found himself in the observation lounge of the Wanderer's Dream, watching the Zephyrian ship Stellar Harmony glide silently alongside them through hyperspace. The alien vessel's crystalline hull caught and refracted the swirling energies of hyperspace in patterns that were almost hypnotic. He'd been trying to sketch them in his personal journal, though his artistic skills were nowhere near adequate for capturing their beauty. "You're frustrated with your drawing," came a familiar musical voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Zarathel entering the lounge. She'd been spending time aboard his ship for the past 2 days, part of their cultural exchange. Her presence had initially made his crew nervous, but her genuine curiosity and surprising sense of humor had quickly won them over. Even Chief Engineer Rodriguez, who had declared all telepaths creepy mind readers, had admitted to Marcus that she was actually pretty cool for an alien. "How did you know?" Marcus asked, then immediately shook his head. "Right. Telepathy." Zaratel settled into the chair beside him with the fluid grace typical of her species. "Actually, I didn't need telepathy for that observation. Your body language was quite clear. The frustrated sighs, the way you kept erasing lines, the muttering under your breath about stupid human fingers not being able to capture what you see." Marcus laughed. "I didn't realize I was being so obvious. Humans are remarkably expressive creatures," Zarathel said, leaning over to look at his sketch. "Your drawings may not be technically perfect, but they capture something else. Emotion. Wonder. The way these patterns make you feel, rather than just how they look." She was close enough now that Marcus could smell something like starlight and ozone, a scent that was completely alien yet somehow pleasant. Her large eyes studied his rough sketches with genuine interest. "May I?" she asked, gesturing towards his journal. Marcus hesitated for a moment. The journal contained more than just sketches. It held his thoughts, observations, and increasingly, his confused feelings about the remarkable alien sitting beside him. But something in her respectful tone made him hand it over. Zarathel flipped through the pages carefully, her expression growing more fascinated with each page she turned. "Captain, these drawings, they're extraordinary." "They're amateur sketches at best," Marcus protested. "No," Zaratel said firmly. "There's something we've lost in Zephyrian art. Look at this." She pointed to a drawing he'd made of her ship's crystal formations. A Zephyrian artist would have captured every detail perfectly, would have shown the exact mathematical relationships between the crystal faces, the precise wavelengths of light being refracted. It would be technically flawless and completely soulless. Marcus studied the drawing she was pointing to. It was rough, imperfect, but he remembered the sense of awe he'd felt while drawing it. "I was trying to capture how it made me feel when I first saw it, like looking at a star being born." "Exactly," Zarathel said, her voice filled with excitement. "You weren't trying to document reality, you were trying to capture the emotional impact of reality. That's something my people used to do long ago before we became so focused on perfection and order. She turned the page and paused at a sketch Marcus had almost forgotten about. It was a quick drawing of her face, done from memory after their first meeting. He'd been experimenting with trying to capture the intelligence in her eyes, the subtle expressions that made her so different from the stoic Zephyrians in the diplomatic files. "This is how you see me?" she asked quietly. Marcus felt his face heat up. "I was just practicing portrait work. It's not very good." "It's beautiful," Zarathel interrupted. "Not because it's a perfect representation of my physical features, but because—" She traced one finger along the lines of the drawing. "You drew me thinking. You captured the moment when I was trying to understand something new. Most beings who look at me see a Zephyrian commander, a representative of an empire, a political entity. You saw a person experiencing wonder. The silence stretched between them, comfortable but charged with something Marcus didn't quite understand." Finally, Zarathel closed the journal and handed it back to him. "Captain, may I share something with you?" "Something about why this mission is so important to me personally?" Marcus nodded, sensing that she was about to reveal something significant. 300 years ago, my people were very different than we are now. We were artists, dreamers, philosophers. Our telepathic abilities were used not for conquest or control, but for sharing beauty, for experiencing art together in ways no other species could imagine. She stood and walked to the viewport, her reflection ghost-like in the transparent aluminum. But then we encountered the Malachite Empire. They were aggressive, expansionist, and completely immune to our telepathic abilities. The war lasted 50 years and nearly destroyed us. When it ended, my people had changed. We decided that survival meant order, discipline, predictability. We systematically eliminated chaos from our culture. But chaos isn't always destructive, Marcus said, beginning to understand. Exactly. Zarathel turned back to him, her eyes bright with passion. We became efficient, powerful, feared throughout the galaxy. But we also became empty. Do you know what the most popular form of art is on Zephyr Prime now? Marcus shook his head. Mathematical equations. Beautiful, complex, perfect mathematical equations. They satisfy our need for order while providing aesthetic pleasure. She laughed, but there was sadness in it. We display formulas the way humans display paintings. That's not necessarily wrong, Marcus said carefully. Math can be beautiful.
It can be, Zarathel agreed. But it's cold. Beauty.
Distant beauty. Not the kind of beauty that makes you feel alive. She gestured towards his journal. Your drawings aren't perfect, but they're full of life, full of the artist's personality and emotions. They tell a story about who you are, what you value, how you see the world. Marcus found himself studying her face, seeing past the alien features to the sadness and longing beneath. You miss it. The old way. I never experienced it, Zarathel said softly. I was born into the new order, but I've studied the old records, the art, from before the war. And when I touch your mind, Captain, I experience something like what I imagine those old artists felt. Your thoughts don't follow logical pathways. They dance. She moved back toward him, and Marcus could see the intensity of her emotions in her expression. Do you understand what a gift that is? To touch a mind that creates beauty simply by existing? Your crew thinks you're just a competent captain, but I can see the poetry in your thoughts, the way you find wonder in the smallest details. Zarathel, Marcus said quietly, using her name without her title for the first time. Are you saying that what you find in my mind, it's helping you remember what your people used to be? It's more than that, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. It's showing me what we could become again. Not just my people, but me personally. The communication system chimed, interrupting the moment. Captain Chen to the bridge, came Lieutenant Park's voice. We're receiving a priority transmission from Earth Command. Marcus sighed, the spell broken. Duty calls. As they made their way to the bridge, Zarathel placed a gentle hand on his arm. Captain, before you speak with your superiors, there's something you should know. My government is becoming concerned about our extended mission. There are those who believe I'm spending too much time studying human minds and not enough time assessing human military capabilities. Are they ordering you to return? Marcus asked, feeling a stab of disappointment that surprised him with its intensity. Not yet, but they're sending additional ships to assist with the mission. Ships commanded by officers who don't share my appreciation for human creativity. She paused at the bridge entrance. Whatever your superiors tell you, whatever orders they give you, please remember that not all Zephyrians are like me. Some of my people see your chaotic minds as a threat to be eliminated, not a wonder to be studied. On the bridge, Admiral Harrison's stern face filled the main screen. Marcus had served under Harrison years ago, and knew the man to be fair but completely by the book. The fact that he was personally making this call meant that the joint mission was attracting serious attention back home.
Captain Chen, Admiral Harrison began without preamble. I'm going to be direct. What the hell are you doing out there? Sir?
Your reports read like first-year Academy students' fantasy about alien contact.
Cultural exchange? Artistic collaboration? This is supposed to be a reconnaissance mission, not a social club meeting. Marcus felt Zarathel's presence beside him, could sense her following the conversation even though she remained diplomatically silent. Admiral, the opportunity for peaceful contact with the Zephyrians is secondary to gathering intelligence on their military capabilities and strategic intentions. Admiral Harrison interrupted. Captain, we've received reports that you're allowing a Zephyrian telepath unrestricted access to your ship and crew. Do you have any idea how reckless that is, sir? Commander Zarathel has been completely forthright about her abilities and has respected all reasonable boundaries. Reasonable boundaries? Admiral Harrison's voice rose. Captain, she's a mind reader from a militaristic empire that has conquered half the galaxy. There are no reasonable boundaries when it comes to protecting human thoughts and secrets. Marcus could feel the weight of his crew's eyes on him, could sense their tension. In his peripheral vision, he noticed Zarathel's posture became more rigid, more formal. The easy camaraderie they'd built over the past few days was evaporating under the pressure of political reality. Admiral, Marcus said carefully, I believe we have an unprecedented opportunity to establish peaceful relations with a powerful galactic civilization. Commander Zarathel has shown nothing but respect for humanity and genuine curiosity about our culture. Captain, your job is not to make policy. Your job is to gather intelligence and return safely with that intelligence. I'm ordering you to conclude your mission and return to Earth immediately. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Marcus could feel the moment slipping away, could sense Zarathel withdrawing back into her formal military persona. Everything they'd discovered about each other, all the potential for understanding between their species, was about to be sacrificed on the altar of political expediency. Admiral, Marcus said slowly, I need to discuss something with my crew. May I contact you in 1 hour with a response? Admiral Harrison's expression softened slightly. Marcus, I know you. You're a good officer with good instincts. But sometimes the bigger picture requires difficult decisions. Don't let personal feelings cloud your judgment. After the transmission ended, the bridge remained quiet for several long moments. Finally, Zarathel spoke, her voice once again carrying the formal tone of a Zephyrian commander. Captain, I believe it would be best if I return to my ship. It appears that our mission has reached its natural conclusion. Wait, Marcus said, turning to face her. Is this what you want? To just walk away and pretend the last few days never happened? For a moment her formal mask slipped, and Marcus could see the person beneath the commander. What I want is irrelevant, Captain. We both have duties to our respective governments. But what you want isn't irrelevant, Marcus insisted. At least it's not irrelevant to me. Zarathel looked around the bridge at his crew, all of whom were carefully studying their instruments and pretending not to listen to the conversation. Captain, perhaps we should continue this discussion in private. As they left the bridge together, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing at a crossroads that would determine not just their personal futures, but the future relationship between humanity and the galaxy at large. The question was whether they would have the courage to choose the harder path, or whether they would allow fear and politics to destroy something that had barely begun to grow. In the privacy of Marcus's quarters, the facade of formal military protocol finally crumbled. Zarathel stood by the viewport, her shoulders tense, staring out at the swirling patterns of hyperspace as if they held answers to impossible questions. Your admiral is not wrong, she said quietly. Nor are my superiors. From a political standpoint, this mission has been reckless from the beginning. Marcus settled into his desk chair, studying her profile. Even in distress, she moved with an otherworldly grace that reminded him she was from a species that had evolved differently, thought differently, lived differently than humanity. But it hasn't been pointless, he said, hasn't it? Zarathel turned from the viewport, and Marcus was struck by the vulnerability in her expression. What have we actually accomplished, Captain? I've confirmed that human minds are chaotic and unpredictable, which my people already knew. You've learned that some Zephyrians are capable of appreciating that chaos, which doesn't change the fact that most of my species considers you a threat. Marcus stood and moved closer to her, careful not to invade her personal space. Zarathel, you're talking like a military commander filing a report. But that's not all we've discovered, is it? She was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her internal struggle. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. No. It's not. Then tell me what we've really found. Zarathel closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, Marcus saw a depth of emotion that took his breath away. We found that understanding between our species isn't just possible, it's beautiful. We found that your chaos and my order don't have to be in conflict. They can complement each other, create something neither could achieve alone. She moved to his desk, where his journal lay open to the sketch he'd made of her. When I look at this drawing, I see myself through your eyes, not as a Zephyrian commander or a representative of an empire, but as an individual worth knowing, worth understanding. That's because you are, Marcus said simply. And when I touch your mind, Zarathel continued, her voice growing stronger, I don't just see chaos, I see a kind of ordered disorder, patterns within randomness. Your thoughts jump from tactical assessments to poetry, to childhood memories to scientific theories, but there's a thread connecting them all, your humanity, your fundamental desire to explore, to understand, to protect those you care about. Marcus felt something shift in the air between them, a tension that had been building for days finally coming to a head. Zarathel, what are you saying? She turned to face him fully, her large eyes bright with unshed tears that surprised him. He hadn't known Zephyrians could cry. I'm saying that I've spent 300 years of my life following orders, maintaining discipline, being the perfect Zephyrian officer. And in 3 days with you, I've remembered what it feels like to be alive. The weight of her words hung in the air between them. Marcus could feel his heart racing, could sense that they were approaching something that would change everything. The feeling is mutual, he said softly. Is it? Zarathel stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could see the silver flecks in her dark eyes. Marcus, I need you to understand something. When I read your mind, I'm not just observing your thoughts. I'm experiencing them. Your wonder when you first saw my ship, your concern for your crew's safety, your frustration with your drawing abilities, your... She paused, color rising in her blue-tinted cheeks. Your attraction to me. Marcus felt his own face flush. Zarathel, I never meant to make you uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? She laughed, a sound like silver bells in starlight. Marcus, you don't understand. In all my centuries of touching other minds, I have never experienced attraction. My people view such emotions as distractions, inefficiencies. But when I experience it through your mind, when I feel what you feel... She reached out tentatively and touched his hand. It's extraordinary. Her skin was warm, surprisingly so, and Marcus could feel a slight tingling where they touched. Are you saying that you're learning human emotions by experiencing them through my mind? More than that, Zarathel said, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. I'm learning to feel them myself. Your chaos isn't just changing how I think, Marcus. It's changing who I am. The ship's communication system chose that moment to chirp with an incoming message. Marcus ignored it, but it chirped again, more insistently. Captain Chen, came Lieutenant Park's voice through the intercom. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Zephyrian fleet. Commander Zarathel is requested to report immediately. Zarathel closed her eyes and sighed. Reality intrudes. It doesn't have to, Marcus said quickly. We could continue on our original mission parameters, exploration, cultural exchange. Marcus, Zarathel interrupted gently. We both know that's not an option anymore. Your government wants you back, and mine is sending additional ships to supervise my activities. This little bubble of possibility we've created can't last forever. Maybe it can't, Marcus agreed, but it doesn't have to end right now, either. The communication system chirped again, more urgently this time. Marcus reached over and activated the intercom. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, the Zephyrian fleet has arrived. 3 heavy cruisers just dropped out of hyperspace off our port bow. They're demanding that Commander Zarathel return to their formation immediately. Marcus looked at Zarathel, who had gone very still. What happens when you go back? I'll be debriefed extensively. My mental state will be analyzed. If they determine that my contact with human minds has compromised my objectivity... She didn't finish the sentence, but Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. And if you don't go back, then I'll be declared a rogue agent. My ship will be seized, my crew imprisoned, and I'll be hunted across the galaxy as a traitor to the Empire. Marcus felt a cold anger building in his chest. So we're supposed to just pretend none of this happened? Go back to our respective corners and forget that we proved our species could understand each other? Marcus? No, he said firmly, moving to his communication panel. Lieutenant Park, patch me through to the Zephyrian Fleet Commander. Captain, what are you doing? Zarathel asked, alarm in her voice. Something probably very stupid, Marcus admitted.
But if we're going to end this, let's at least be honest about what we're ending.
The main screen in his quarters flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a Zephyrian heavy cruiser. The commander was an imposing figure, even by Zephyrian standards, with elaborate rank crystals woven into his silver hair and robes that spoke of high status in the Empire's hierarchy.
I am Fleet Commander Veltar, the Zephyrian announced without preamble. You are harboring a member of the Imperial Navy. Return her immediately. Fleet Commander, Marcus replied formally. Commander Zarathel is here as part of an authorized cultural exchange mission. She's free to return to your fleet at any time, but I won't have her treated as a fugitive. Veltar's eyes narrowed. Human, you do not understand the situation. Commander Zarathel has been compromised by extended contact with your chaotic mental patterns. She requires immediate medical and psychological treatment. I'm standing right here, Zarathel said sharply, stepping into view of the screen. I don't require treatment, Fleet Commander. I require the opportunity to complete my mission. Your mission was reconnaissance, Veltar replied coldly. According to my sensors, you have spent the past 73 hours aboard the human vessel with minimal mental shielding. The psychological contamination is evident in your very posture, Commander. You are exhibiting emotional responses inappropriate for a Zephyrian officer. Marcus watched Zarathel's expression harden into something he'd never seen before. Not the formal military bearing she'd worn during their first meeting, but something colder, more dangerous. Psychological contamination? She repeated slowly. Fleet Commander, are you suggesting that learning to understand and appreciate another culture constitutes a form of mental illness? I am stating that prolonged exposure to chaotic human thought patterns has compromised your ability to function as a Zephyrian officer. Veltar replied. You will report to my ship immediately for treatment. And if I refuse? Veltar's expression didn't change, but Marcus could see the threat in his posture. Then you will be relieved of command and taken into custody for your own protection and the security of the Empire.
Marcus stepped forward, putting himself between Zarathel and the screen.
Fleet Commander, with respect, Commander Zarathel is currently engaged in a diplomatic mission with the human government. Any interference with that mission could be considered an act of aggression. Human, Veltar said, his voice carrying a dangerous edge, you are in no position to make threats. Your single ship faces 3 Zephyrian heavy cruisers. Stand down and surrender our officer, or face the consequences. Marcus felt Zarathel's hand touch his shoulder, felt her move up beside him. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority that reminded Marcus that she wasn't just a curious alien fascinated by human creativity. She was a commander in one of the galaxy's most powerful military forces. Fleet Commander Veltar, I am invoking Article 7 of the Military Code. As the ranking officer on a first contact mission, I have the authority to make field decisions regarding diplomatic protocols. I choose to continue my mission. Veltar's composure cracked slightly. Commander, you cannot seriously believe that Article 7 applies to this situation. I believe that first contact with a new species requires careful study and understanding, Zarathel replied firmly. I also believe that premature termination of such contact could have serious diplomatic consequences for the Empire. Therefore, I am exercising my authority to continue the mission until proper protocols can be established. Marcus could see the frustration building in Veltar's expression. Very well, Commander. But understand this. You have 24 standard hours to conclude your mission. After that, I will consider you to be acting against the interests of the Empire, and I will take appropriate action. The screen went dark, leaving Marcus and Zarathel alone in the sudden silence of his quarters. That bought us time, Marcus said, but not much. 24 hours isn't long enough to establish proper diplomatic protocols. Zarathel turned to him with a strange expression, one that combined determination with something that looked like recklessness. Marcus, what if we're approaching this wrong? What if the answer isn't to convince our governments that we're right, but to prove that there's a better way?
What do you mean?
I mean that we're trying to work within systems that are fundamentally opposed to what we've discovered.
Your military sees me as a threat. My fleet sees you as a contaminating influence. But what if we could show them something different? Something that proves our species are better together than apart? Marcus studied her face, seeing the plan forming in her brilliant mind. Zerathel, what are you thinking? She smiled, and Marcus recognized the expression he'd grown to love over the past few days. The look of someone who had just had a wonderfully terrible idea. I'm thinking, Captain, that it's time to show the galaxy what humans and Zephyrians can accomplish when we stop being afraid of each other's differences and start celebrating them. That sounds suspiciously like you're planning to go rogue. Not rogue, Zarathel corrected. Revolutionary. As Marcus looked into her determined eyes, he realized that the next 24 hours were going to change everything, not just for them personally, but for the future of human-alien relations. The question was whether they were brave enough to take that leap into the unknown together. 12 hours later, Marcus stood on the bridge of the Wanderer's Dream, staring at the most beautiful and terrifying sight he'd ever witnessed. Before them stretched the Kethara Nebula, a swirling mass of ionized gases and exotic particles that had been declared impenetrable by every major galactic civilization for over 1,000 years. Ships that entered the nebula were never seen again, their fate lost to the chaotic energy storms that raged within. Captain, Lieutenant Park said nervously, "Are you absolutely certain about this?" Marcus wasn't certain about anything anymore, except that the plan Zarathel had proposed was either brilliant or insane, possibly both. "The calculations are sound," reported Lieutenant Commander Torres from the science station. "The theoretical framework that Commander Zarathel provided should allow us to navigate the energy storms, but there's no way to test it without actually entering the nebula." "And if the theory is wrong?" asked Chief Engineer Rodriguez. "Then we become another cautionary tale about human recklessness," Marcus replied grimly. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. For centuries, every attempt to explore the Kethara Nebula had failed because ships tried to impose order on chaos, to navigate by conventional means through an environment that defied conventional physics. But Zarathel had realized something that no one else had considered. What if the key to surviving the nebula wasn't to fight its chaos, but to embrace it? Human minds, with their natural tendency toward chaotic thinking, might be able to intuitively navigate the ever-changing energy patterns within the nebula. And Zephyrian telepathic abilities could read those human intuitions and translate them into precise navigation commands. It was a perfect fusion of human chaos and Zephyrian order. If it worked, they would accomplish something that had been impossible for a millennium. If it failed, they would die. But at least they would die proving that humans and Zephyrians could achieve more together than either species could accomplish alone. "Captain," came Zarathel's voice through the communication system, "the stellar harmony is ready to proceed. My crew has volunteered to follow your ship into the nebula." Marcus felt a stab of concern. Zaratel's crew had made their choice to follow her, but that didn't make him feel any less responsible for their lives. "Zarathel, are you sure about this? Once we enter the nebula, there's no going back. If Fleet Commander Veltard decides we're traitors, he could destroy us the moment we emerge." "If we emerge," came her reply, and Marcus could hear the smile in her voice. "But Marcus, consider the alternative. We could return to our respective fleets, file our reports, and watch our governments spend the next century arguing about trade agreements and territory, while completely missing the real opportunity for partnership between our species. Or we could die horribly in an energy storm," pointed out Lieutenant Park. "There is that possibility," Zaratel acknowledged cheerfully. "But where's the fun in playing it safe?" Marcus shook his head, amazed that a 300-year-old alien military commander had somehow become the most recklessly optimistic person he'd ever met. The effect of human chaos on her Zephyrian psyche had been even more profound than either of them had anticipated. "All stations, prepare for nebula entry," Marcus announced to his crew. "And people, it's been an honor serving with you." As the Wanderer's Dream approached the swirling boundary of the Kethara Nebula, Marcus felt Zaratel's mental presence touch his mind. It was a sensation unlike anything he'd ever experienced, a gentle warmth that seemed to settle into his thoughts without invasive force. "Are you ready for this?" her voice whispered directly into his consciousness. "No," Marcus thought back, amazed that he could communicate telepathically. "But let's do it anyway." He felt her amusement ripple through the mental connection. Very human response. "Trust your instincts, Marcus. Let your mind wander where it wants to go. I'll translate your intuitions into navigation commands." The ship crossed the threshold into the nebula, And immediately, Marcus understood why so many expeditions had failed. The space around them erupted into chaos. Energy storms raged in impossible colors, gravitational anomalies twisted spacetime into knots, and electromagnetic fields strong enough to crush a starship flickered and danced like aurora. Every instrument on the bridge immediately went haywire. Navigation sensors showed contradictory readings, the gravitational compass spun wildly, and the main computer began displaying error messages in 17 different languages. "We're flying blind," reported Lieutenant Park, her voice tight with controlled fear. "No," Marcus said quietly, feeling something he'd never experienced before. Through his connection with Zarathal, he could sense the patterns within the chaos. Not logical patterns that could be mapped or calculated, but intuitive ones that felt like music or poetry. "We're flying by feel." He closed his eyes and let his mind drift, the way it naturally wanted to, from thought to thought without logical progression. In his imagination, he could see safe paths through the energy storms, not because they made scientific sense, but because they felt right. Left 40 degrees, he thought to Zarathal. "There's a calm spot behind that gravitation eddy." "I see it," came her reply, and Marcus felt the ship respond to navigation commands that came from pure intuition rather than sensor data. For the next 6 hours, they navigated the impossible maze of the Kethara Nebula. Marcus let his chaotic human mind wander freely, trusting in instincts he didn't understand, while Zarathal translated his gut feelings into precise course corrections. Behind them, the stellar harmony followed, its Zephyrian crew trusting in a navigation system that defied everything they'd been taught about spaceflight. It was the most terrifying and exhilarating experience of Marcus's life. Several times, they passed close enough to energy storms to feel the ship's hull vibrate with their power. Once, a gravitational anomaly grabbed them and spun them through a three-dimensional loop that left half the crew nauseous. But somehow, impossibly, Marcus's chaotic intuitions kept finding safe passage through the deadly maze. "Captain!" Lieutenant Commander Torres called out excitedly. "I'm reading something on long-range sensors, artificial structures, about 2,000 kilometers ahead." "Are you sure?" Marcus asked, not daring to hope. "Confirmed," Torres replied. "It's a space station of some kind, massive beyond anything I've ever seen. And, Captain, it's not on any of our star charts." Marcus felt a thrill of excitement run through his connection with Zarathal. They had found something that no one had ever seen before, something hidden in the heart of the nebula that only their unique partnership could have discovered. As they emerged from the final energy storm, the space station came into view, and Marcus heard gasps of amazement from his crew. The structure was enormous, easily the size of a small moon, and it was beautiful in a way that defied description. Crystalline towers spiraled upward from a central hub, each one catching and reflecting the nebula's chaotic energies in patterns that seemed to shift and dance. But what truly amazed Marcus was the style of the architecture. It wasn't purely functional like modern Zephyrian construction, nor was it chaotic like human design. It was something in between, something that suggested order emerging from chaos, or perhaps chaos being shaped into order. "Marcus," came Zarathal's awed whisper through their mental link. "I know this place. Not personally, but from the historical records. This is Kethara Station, built by the ancient Zephyrians over 3,000 years ago. It was lost during the Great War and presumed destroyed."
What was it?
Marcus asked aloud, his crew listening intently.
A collaboration.
"Center." Zarathal's voice came through the communication system, wonder evident in her tone. "During the age before my people became obsessed with order, Kethara Station was where different species came together to share knowledge, art, and culture. It was hidden in the nebula as a neutral meeting ground, accessible only to those who could navigate the chaos." Marcus stared at the ancient station and felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. The navigation system we just used, the combination of human intuition and Zephyrian telepathy, that's how it was always supposed to work, isn't it? That's how ships used to reach this place. Yes, Zarathal confirmed. The ancient Zephyrians built this place to be accessible only through cooperation between species with different mental capabilities. It was designed to be found only by those willing to trust in each other's strengths. As they approached the station, automated systems awakened for the first time in millennia. Docking bays opened to receive their ships and lights began to flicker on throughout the massive structure. It was as if the station itself had been waiting for someone to rediscover the secret of partnership. Captain, Lieutenant Park reported, we're receiving a transmission from Fleet Commander Veltar. The Zephyrian fleet followed our trail to the nebula's edge, but they're not entering. He's demanding that we return immediately. Marcus looked at the ancient station before them, then at the readings showing its vast libraries, laboratories, and cultural centers slowly coming back to life after millennia of dormancy. This was the proof he and Zarathel needed, the evidence that their species had been meant to work together. Tell Fleet Commander Veltar that we'll return in 72 hours, Marcus said. And tell him that when we do, we'll have something that will change everything. Marcus, Zarathel's voice was soft through their mental connection. Are you prepared for the possibility that our governments still won't understand? That they might see this discovery as a threat rather than an opportunity? Marcus looked around his bridge at his crew, all of whom were staring at the miraculous station with wonder in their eyes. Then he felt Zarathel's presence in his mind, warm and supportive, and completely unlike anything he'd ever experienced. Then, we made them understand, he said firmly. We've come too far and discovered too much to give up now. As the two ships docked with the ancient station, Marcus realized that they had passed a point of no return. Whatever happened next, whether their governments embraced their discovery or condemned them as traitors, nothing would ever be the same. They had proven that humans and Zephyrians could accomplish the impossible together. Now they just had to convince the galaxy that impossible was worth believing in. 2 days later, Marcus stood in the central council chamber of Cathara Station, surrounded by wonders that defied imagination. The ancient Zephyrian architects had created a space that seemed to breathe with life, its crystalline walls pulsing gently with bioluminescent patterns that responded to the emotions and thoughts of those within. Even more amazingly, the station's vast databases had contained translation protocols for over 300 different species, including humans. The chamber itself told the story of what the galaxy had once been. Holographic records showed beings from dozens of different worlds working together, sharing knowledge and creating art that no single species could have imagined alone. It was a vision of cooperation that both human and modern Zephyrian civilizations had forgotten was possible. Marcus, Zarathel said softly, approaching him from where she'd been studying a wall display showing ancient star charts. The station's databases have been uploading information directly into my mind for the past 6 hours. The scope of what our peoples achieved together in the past is... She paused, searching for words. It's everything we dreamed it could be, and more. Marcus turned from his own studies to look at her. Over the past 2 days, he'd watched her transform from a disciplined military commander into something entirely new. Her connection to the station's ancient systems, combined with her ongoing mental link with him, had awakened aspects of her personality that had been dormant for centuries. Have you learned anything that might help us convince our governments? He asked. Zaratel's expression grew thoughtful. I've learned that the cooperation between our species wasn't just beneficial, it was essential. The ancient records show that the greatest achievements, the most beautiful art, the most profound scientific discoveries, all came from partnerships between chaotic and ordered minds. She gestured to a nearby display that showed the construction of massive terraforming devices. Look at this. Ancient humans provided the creative inspiration and adaptive problem-solving, while Zephyrians provided the precision and long-term planning needed to execute the vision. Neither species could have built these alone. Marcus studied the display, marveling at the elegant fusion of human ingenuity and Zephyrian perfection. But something went wrong. Why did the cooperation end? Fear, Zarathel said simply. The records are clear about that. When the Malachite Empire began its expansion, some leaders on both sides decided that cooperation made them vulnerable. They believed that relying on alien minds made them weak. Were they right? Zarathel touched the wall display, and new images flowed across its surface. These showed the aftermath of the cooperation's end. Stagnant Zephyrian society focused solely on order, human expansion that prioritized conquest over exploration, and dozens of smaller civilizations that fell to the Malachites because they lacked the unified response the cooperation could have provided. The historical data suggests the opposite, she said. The civilizations that maintained cooperative relationships survived the Malachite expansion. Those that retreated into isolation either fell to conquest or stagnated into irrelevance. A soft chime echoed through the chamber, and Lieutenant Park's voice came through Marcus's communicator. Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions. Admiral Harrison is demanding your immediate return to human space, and Fleet Commander Veltar is threatening to send boarding parties if Commander Zarathel doesn't report back within 6 hours. Marcus exchanged glances with Zarathel. They had hoped to have more time to study the station's archives, to find the perfect evidence to support their case for renewed cooperation. But political reality was intruding once again. "There's something else," Zarathel said quietly. "The station's central intelligence system has been trying to communicate with me. It's been dormant for millennia, but our presence here has somehow activated dormant protocols." "What kind of protocols?" Before Zarathel could answer, the air in the chamber shimmered, and a holographic figure materialized before them. It was clearly Zephyrian in design, but unlike any Zephyrian Marcus had ever seen. The figure's features combined the graceful lines of modern Zephyrians with something warmer, more expressive. "Greetings," the hologram said, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Marcus's mind. "I am the Guardian of Kethara Station, activated by the return of cooperative consciousness to this facility. You are the first partnership to successfully navigate the nebula's trials in over 3,000 years." Marcus felt Zarathel's amazement through their mental link. "Guardian, we are Captain Marcus Chen of Humanity and Commander Zarathel of the modern Zephyrian Empire. We've come seeking evidence that our species can work together peacefully." "The evidence you seek is all around you," the Guardian replied. "But more than that, you yourselves are the evidence. Your successful navigation of the nebula, your mental partnership, your discovery of this station, all prove that cooperation between your species is not only possible but natural."
Our governments don't see it that way, Zarathel said.
"They view cooperation as weakness, as a threat to security and independence." The Guardian's expression grew sad. "Yes, the great fear that destroyed the first age of cooperation. Tell me, Commander of the modern Zephyrians, when your people eliminated chaos from their culture, what did they gain?" "Order, efficiency, military superiority, an empire that spans hundreds of worlds." "And what did they lose?" Zarathel was quiet for a long moment, then said softly, "Joy, creativity. The ability to grow and change. We became powerful, but we also became empty. And you, Captain of Humanity," the Guardian turned to Marcus, "your species has maintained its chaos, its creativity. What has this given you?" "Innovation, adaptability, the drive to explore and discover. But also," Marcus paused, thinking of the conflicts and destruction that human chaos had sometimes caused. "Also, division, war, the inability to unite fully even among ourselves." "Precisely," the Guardian said with satisfaction. "Each of your species possesses half of what made the ancient civilizations great. Zephyrians have order without creativity. Humans have creativity without sustainable order. Together, you could reclaim what was lost." A new alarm began sounding throughout the station, and Marcus's communicator crackled to life. "Captain, this is Lieutenant Park. Long-range sensors are picking up multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace at the nebula's edge. It looks like reinforcements for both fleets." "How many ships?" Marcus asked. 12 Zephyrian heavy cruisers and 6 human battleships. "Sir, I think both our governments have decided that this situation requires a military response." Marcus felt his heart sink. The arrival of battle fleets meant that their discovery was about to be overshadowed by the very fear and mistrust they'd been trying to overcome. "Guardian," Zarathel said urgently, "is there anything in the station's archives that could help us prevent a conflict?" The Guardian's holographic form flickered, then solidified with new purpose. "There is one possibility. The station contains a communication array designed to project thoughts and emotions directly into the minds of those connected to it. It was originally used to share artistic experiences across vast distances, but it could be adapted to share your memories of discovery and cooperation." "You mean we could show our fleets what we've experienced? Let them feel what we've felt?" "Not just show them," the Guardian corrected. "Let them experience it as you did. Share the wonder of your first meeting, the joy of discovering understanding across species lines, the triumph of navigating the nebula together. Make them feel what cooperation truly means." Marcus looked at Zarathel, seeing his own mix of hope and terror reflected in her eyes.
It's risky.
Forcing mental contact with entire fleets could be seen as an act of aggression, but it might also be our only chance to prevent a war, Zarathel replied. "Marcus, are you willing to share everything with them? Not just the good parts, but all of it. Your fears, your doubts, your growing feelings for me." Marcus felt his face warm at her words, but he nodded. "If it means preventing bloodshed and maybe, just maybe, convincing our peoples that they're stronger together than apart, then yes. Then let's do it," Zarathel said firmly. Guardian initialized the communication array. As the ancient systems came to life around them, Marcus felt Zarathel's hand slip into his. Her touch was warm and reassuring, and through their mental link, he could sense her determination mixed with affection. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "I want you to know that these past few days have been the most alive I've felt in 3 centuries." "The feeling is mutual," Marcus replied, squeezing her hand. The Guardian's voice echoed through the chamber. "Array is ready. When you activate the transmission, every mind within 50 light-years will experience your shared memories. Are you prepared?" Marcus looked out through the chamber's great windows at the swirling beauty of the nebula, then at the ancient station that represented everything their species could accomplish together. Finally, he looked at Zarathel, the remarkable being who had seen chaos in his mind and found it beautiful. "Do it," he said. The transmission burst outward from Kithara Station like a wave of pure thought and emotion. Across both fleets, hardened military officers suddenly experienced the wonder of first contact, the joy of discovering understanding across impossible differences, the triumph of achieving the impossible through cooperation. They felt Marcus's initial fear transform into fascination, Zarathel's professional curiosity blossom into genuine affection. They experienced the navigation of the nebula not as abstract data, but as an exercise in trust and partnership. They saw the ancient station not just as an archaeological discovery, but as proof that cooperation between species wasn't just possible, but essential. Most importantly, they felt the deep, genuine connection that had grown between Marcus and Zaratel, the way their different minds complemented each other to create something greater than either could achieve alone. The transmission lasted only minutes, but its effects rippled through both fleets like a stone dropped in still water. For the first time in generations, Zephyrian officers experienced raw emotion without seeing it as weakness. Human crew members felt the serenity and focus that came with ordered thinking. When the transmission ended, the silence lasted for nearly an hour. Then, slowly, communications began flowing between the ships. Not demands or threats, but questions, wonder, requests to know more. Admiral Harrison's face appeared on the station's communication screen, and Marcus was amazed to see tears in the old soldier's eyes. "Captain Chen, I owe you an apology. I felt what you felt, experienced what you experienced. I understand now what you've been trying to tell us." Fleet Commander Veltar appeared on an adjacent screen, his typically stern expression replaced with something that looked like awe. "Commander Zarafel, you have opened our minds to possibilities we had forgotten existed. The Empire owes you a debt of gratitude, not a court-martial." Over the next several hours, representatives from both fleets docked with Kethara Station. They came not as investigators or judges, but as explorers eager to learn about the cooperation their ancestors had achieved. Scientists, artists, philosophers, and engineers from both species began the slow process of rediscovering how to work together. And in the center of it all, Marcus and Zarathel stood hand in hand, watching their 2 species take the first tentative steps toward a partnership that could transform the galaxy. "So, what happens now?" Marcus asked, as they watched human and Zephyrian officers working side by side to catalog the station's archives. "Now we do the hard work," Zarathel replied with a smile. "Building trust takes time. Establishing new protocols will require patience, and there will be setbacks and misunderstandings along the way. But we'll face them together?" Zarathel's grip on his hand tightened. "Together. Your chaos and my order, your creativity and my precision, just like it was always meant to be." Marcus looked out at the nebula swirling around them, its chaotic beauty now familiar and welcoming rather than threatening. They had entered the Kethara Nebula as representatives of 2 species that barely understood each other. They were leaving as partners who had proven that the universe was far more beautiful when experienced together. "I love the way your mind works," Zarathel said softly, her telepathic voice warm in his thoughts. "I love the way you see my mind," Marcus replied, "the way you find beauty in chaos." As Kethara Station hummed with new life and purpose around them, Marcus realized that they had accomplished something far greater than proving their species could cooperate. They had rediscovered the fundamental truth that the galaxy's greatest wonders weren't achieved by imposing order on chaos or by letting chaos reign unchecked. They were achieved by finding the perfect balance between the two. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, you found that balance not just in civilizations or technologies or great works of art, but in the simple miracle of 2 minds that looked at each other and thought, "Yes, you understand me. And I understand you." In the end, that understanding was the most precious discovery of all.